You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!
Hey everybody, okay, so welcome back. It's good to have you here. It's 7:01 p.m. on the East Coast, and we are back in Studio A, which I gotta say, I love Studio A, but I also love Studio B. It's very cozy. It looks nice these days, and I don't know, I just feel like things flow over there in a different way, and that's why I've just been every once in a while when Aurora begs in a certain way, I'll say, who do I have coming on the show tonight? And is it possible? I don't know. But I'm liking being back here at the flagship station of the Quite Frankly world. Almost 20 years in the making now. So welcome. And it's going to be a good one tonight. We got Timothy Gordon that is going to co-pilot with me in a little while. He's going to be on with us, and we are going to both host Robert Marro Jr., who wrote this book right here, Malachi Martin, In the Shadows of the Vatican. It was published, available for purchase on December 2nd, and I think it's already sold out. At least that's what it says on Amazon, and so we'll bring that up in other things. Oh, also, last night, let me just put this out here, too, for anybody. Oh, before I even say that, roll call. Drop your city, your state, your country, your county, whatever the hell it is, just not your social security number, in the chat. Show everybody where you're from. Even if you're watching after the fact, roll call in the comments. Leave a comment, leave a like, chat, and interact with this show, because the show is here for you. So interact with it. And that is how we are going to reestablish ourselves in a brand new world that is being smothered by anti-spam bullshit. We're going to do it. I'm going to show everybody how high quality of an audience this is. Anyway, thank you. Show me where you're at. You know where I'm from. It's Westchester, New York, the armpit of New York. And I'm well bathed though. I've been bathed and I'm smelling fine. That's all that matters. But last night, let me just throw this out here for everybody. Monthly sponsors, which now includes YouTube members. Make sure you check the Patreon, the subscribe. I don't know if these notifications get to people, so I just want to let you know. Make sure you check the Patreon, the Subscribe Star, the members only blog on quitefrankly.tv. If you subscribe through the website, you get the password to that blog. Everybody does, but you don't need it if you're on Patreon or Subscribe Star. And now, of course, YouTube members. You get the new YouTube members only section for all of the members only videos and posts and links and all that. I posted a short video last night after the show was over that Lauren ingeniously took that shows a different angle of Aurora's Wednesday night pop-in when she just popped in on the stream last night, as she loves to do. I think it's a pretty cool perspective. So go check it out. Don't miss out on it. There's tons of behind the scenes and bonus streams and everything else when you become a monthly sponsor, or again, like I said, and welcome. Now we have 7 members on the YouTube. So how do you know? What do you know? Maybe a golden age is coming. Okay. Before we bring on, both my guests are on it. First things first, I want to bring in, I got to bring in Timothy Gordon. Let's bring in Timothy. Hold on. He is the host, Rules for Retrogrades. He's been coming on this show for a long time, and you want to know something? When I booked tonight's guest, I said to myself, I need Timothy Gordon as the co-host, because out of all the things I really love doing on Quite Frankly, one of the things that I love the most started in March of 2022 with this man in tow. It was the Quite Frankly Book Club. That was the inaugural book club sessions. They were for Windswept House by Malachi Martin, Father Malachi Martin. And tonight we're going to be able to, Tim, we're going to be able to talk to Robert Marro Jr., who was able to spend a good amount of time driving around with Father Martin, and this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Frank? Thanks for bringing me on. Is that in 2022, nearly 4 years ago now, it had already been 3.5 years that you and I had been friends collaborating on stuff like this. So it's a joy. I mean, the book club was amazing. I'd never read it, Windswept House, before we went through it, but we'd already been friends and collaborators, close collaborators for 3.5 years. So
that's crazy.
I'm one of my favorite dudes in the world, on the internet, whatever. I'm glad to do it with you.
You know, me too. I'm glad that we're doing this here too. And you know, the other thing there is, when I first found your work, of course, you were doing the streams with Taylor Marshall, and I think one of the first things I found you guys on is when I was looking for anything on the third secret of Fatima.
Yep.
And when I found you guys talking about this, I said, okay, this is interesting. And then inevitably, I listened to talks that you guys had about exorcism and, of course, Father Martin. And at that point, I had only known a little bit about him through those Art Bell streams, which I then went and listened to 8 times each because they're just so entertaining. But then we read this together. I said, if I'm going to kick off this book club, it's got to be with this. And I'm glad we did, man. And here we are almost 4 years after that now.
I know. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. Father Time is undefeated. He always wins. We're getting older. We've streamed on that, and it's crazy. But I mean, deep church, deep state stuff, CIA, Luciferianism is like the most interesting combo of topics. That it's like fusion cuisine. And it's like the most fascinating thing you can be talking about, like the satanic influence of MK Ultra as it's remedied by Mary's promise and the third secret of Fatima. And Malachi Martin is all of it. It's satanic enthronements in the American Midwest together with the Vatican in the 1960s, Vatican II. What the hell? This is literally all the most interesting stuff.
Dude, I don't want to be anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else except in that kind of a just the stories alone. You say, oh man, holy shit. And then you think, you know, I was thinking about just that enthronement scene in particular. It's obviously got to come up, but the more time passes, the more I wonder, wow, it's just, you know, a lot of people had to die and have many years pass before some people started taking a second look at their work. And it's really crazy how things start falling into place for me with this around 2022, because what we read in that book, which is supposed to be somewhat fictionalized, but not, I realized that we had actually lived through most of what he said was coming. And I said, damn, all right, well, I guess some people really do have the inside baseball on things. I don't know, any big updates with you before we bring in Robert? Because we're ahead of schedule, but I just like chilling. We don't have enough time to talk about Stranger Things, but still.
Speaking of MK Ultra, yeah, I would just say guys like us, speaking of the 1980s, kids of the 80s like yourself and myself, or I guess young kids of 80s and early 90s, we realize now, particularly Catholics, that Catholic reverts like yourself and myself, we realize we were living through the proof and medias res. And I just grew up thinking it was all a joke. The faith, Roman Catholicism, Christianity writ large, because of the conditions for the possibility of Malachi Martin's and others like his stories being true. So that's why I'm like, oh, now it all fits. That was all evidence, all the stuff that I hated, you know, adults not seeming to take anything seriously, religious indifferentism within the faith. That's all the proof that Malachi Martin had been warning about in the 60s and 70s as he was having his conversion, leaving the Jesuits, becoming a real man, priest of faith, maybe bishop of faith, some say, secret episcopatization. But so there, one more thing. You asked if I had any big stuff happening. I have a big announcement. This sounds kind of weird. Together with Candace Owens next week, so that should be really, really exciting.
Is she coming on your show?
No, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than a single sort of show. Podcast stream collab. It's more than that. Well, I can't. I guess I shouldn't have said it. I'm a tease. But,
yeah. Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you behind the scenes.
Well,
I'll tell you behind the scenes.
If it's next week, we're not going to have to wait long anyway.
Yeah. It won't be too long, but it's going to be a big deal. It's just taken a long time. It's like everything moves slow until it moves fast. And that you know how the legwork is behind the scenes. I've been waiting to make this announcement for about 9 months. So
yeah, I know. But I think about the timing now. I mean, it's like just 9 months of work, and it just happens to get rolled out when she is in the center of one of the biggest firestorms, divisive firestorms of all time. This is something else.
I know, double firestorms. And I'm not involved in any of this, the France stuff or the Charlie Kirk stuff. It doesn't involve any of that. But yeah, it's provident timing, to be sure.
Okay.
So,
well, we'll be waiting with bated breath. I can't wait to get a little bit of inside baseball on that. But let me get a little bit into our guest tonight. I'm going to, where the heck? Here we go. Okay, so we got Father Malachi Martin, famed enigmatic ex-Jesuit exorcist. That I'm getting everything in the everything down here. Author, Dead Sea Scrolls archaeologist, Cold War Vatican spy. There's a lot in this book on that I never knew. He never talked about that on air. An advisor to 3 popes, a person surrounded by myth and legend in many respects, who I believe has been vindicated in his analysis of what has been driving both the Vatican and the culture at large deeper into the fold of the Freemasonic New World Order. And we have a guest on tonight. Tonight, Timothy and I have the honor of speaking with longtime personal friend of Father Martin, author of what is already a bestseller, Malachi Martin in the Shadows of the Vatican. Wow. Robert Marro Jr., are you there? Robert?
You froze.
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you froze for a second.
Oh, okay. Well, Robert, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on.
Thank you very much.
And you're here with Timothy as well.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Robert. Great to see you.
Call me Rob.
You got it. So, Rob, listen, you first of all, the book came out on Tuesday. I went onto the Amazon today, and it says it's already sold out. How many did you print?
I think the publisher told me they did an initial run of about 20,000 copies, hardbound copies.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not even 48 hours, and it's sold out. It says you can still buy it on Amazon, but it's going to put you on a waiting list. That's pretty impressive.
My managing editor told me they should have it back in stock Monday, Tuesday at the latest.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's something to know. I put the link in the description of the episode so people can go and check that out and put it in their Christmas baskets. So, Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Just to put this out there, you are a former, or at least you were active at the time when you became very close to Father Martin, CIA operative. And,
yes.
You know, of course, people in the audience are going to be giving you the enhanced sniff test now, but I'm sure that you are used to that at this point. What kind of work were you doing with Central Intelligence at the time that you met Father Martin?
At the time, I was what's called a field operations officer.
Okay. And
right. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with the workings of the agency, you or Tim, but the agency, if you want to take a look at it like a pie bifurcated into 4 quadrants. You've got the Directorate of Intelligence, which is the guys who sit in their offices thinking lofty thoughts and writing reports for the President and the National Security Council. You've got the Directorate of Science and Technology, They maintain all of the technical platforms of the agency, things like what I used to refer to as the great Polaroid in the sky. You've got the Directorate of Administration that makes sure everyone from the janitors all the way up to the director himself or herself gets paid on time. And then you have the Directorate of Operations. Those are the people out in the field around the world doing the hard leg work. And that's where I work. I was what they call a case officer.
Okay, so when you watch, did you ever watch any episodes of that TV series Homeland?
No, and pretty much for the same reason that people who are accountants don't like to watch movies about accountants.
I can imagine.
No one likes to watch movies about accountants, but
well, okay.
Never been a movie about an accountant, but aside from The Accountant.
Oh, there's got to be.
Accountant.
Yeah, there's got to be. I'm going to remember halfway through the stream. I say, "Oh, there's another movie you guys should watch." So when you first tell us a little bit about first meeting Malachi Martin. I've read most of the book, almost cover to cover. I had to make some pit stops along the way just because the time I had to put this together. But I do know that you knew of him prior to your meeting, and it just happened to be serendipitous that you were in New York working a case around the time that he was already plying his trade here, right?
Yes, I was actually stationed at the CIA station in New York City, and I was on an exercise, and I ducked into the old St. Agnes's Church on East 43rd Street in New York City. It was an old wooden Gothic church built in the late 19th century, and having been raised up until then a Novus Ordo Catholic, I stopped in there, and they had the Tridentine Mass. They advertised it as the Old Latin Mass on Sundays, and I walked in, and it was an old Gothic church that was lit up with hundreds of devotional candles inside the church, and I was kind of struck by it, and I made a note to come back the following Sunday. And I did, and I experienced my first traditional high Latin Mass, according to the books of 1962. And I remember thinking to myself, looking around during the Mass and thinking, this is nothing like I've ever experienced before. And the thought just occurred to me, this is where God lives. Seriously, that's exactly what I thought. And I became friends with Monsignor Eugene Clark and some of the priests that were there. And it was at the time, it was a well-known haven for both traditionalists and traditionalist priests who had been kind of unceremoniously kicked out of their parishes. And I became good friends with a Father John Perricone. He's a well-known traditionalist priest here on the East Coast. And he asked me, would I like to become one of the altar servers? And I eventually became the director of the altar servers for the parish. And he and I used to go out every couple of weeks for cheap Chinese food for dinner. And I had with me one night Malachi's book, The Keys of This Blood. And he said, do you find that book interesting? I said, fascinating. I said, I've never read anything like it. And then he said, well, I know Malachi Martin. Would you like to have dinner with him one night?
Oh.
And after picking my jaw up off the floor, I said, of course, absolutely. So he arranged for me and about 5 seminarians from St. Joseph's. It's called Dunwoody in New York, St. Joseph's Seminary up in the Bronx, to have dinner with Malachi at a restaurant on the Upper East Side of Manhattan called the Isle of Capri. And that's how I met him.
Wow. Tim, anytime tonight, you just jump right in. Okay. You don't need any invitation. But let me just throw this out there. Another distinction, since we're now in New York, because I know this one part about Malachi Martin's story is when he came here after being released by the Jesuits. I mean, that's a distinction. Jesuit, ex-Jesuit. That's another distinction that garners similar levels of skepticism as even mentioning the CIA. It's Jesuit order. And that's simply, that is a jump point, oddly enough, for Father Martin into this independent life that he was able to pursue afterwards. Can you give everybody a little bit of a background of the reasons for his departure from the order?
He departed the Jesuit order in 1965 because as the Second Vatican Council it progressed, he became increasingly disenchanted with the leftward drift of the order, to the point where there were many, many Jesuits who were turning their back on traditional Roman Catholic orthodoxy, and they were embracing something that he called Gramscian Marxism, which is a Marxism which infiltrates Roman Catholicism, but empties Roman Catholicism of all of its transcendent meaning. Many Jesuits at the time were becoming prominent leftists. Some were even supporting guerrilla movements in Central and South America. Some even took up arms against their governments. And he said, this is not what I joined the Jesuit order for. This is not the Ignatian charism. You had Jesuits who were looking at Jesus as instead of the savior of mankind, they were looking at Jesus as the prototypical revolutionary worker. And they were casting his mother in terms of, she's the mother of the proletariat, the mother of the working class.
Oh.
What they were doing was they were systematically emptying all Catholic teaching and Catholic intimacy with the divine. They were emptying it of all of its transcendent content, and they were making it purely this worldly and aligned with socialist Marxism. Well, so he went to Pope Paul. He was actually close with Pope Paul because of his activities in the years prior. He was an advisor. He was reporting directly to Augustine Cardinal Bea, the senior most Jesuit, and he said, I can no longer abide by what the Jesuit order is doing. I would like to be released from my vows as a Jesuit. I'd like to be released from my vows of poverty so I can go make an independent living. I'd like to be released from my vow of obedience so I don't have to report to the Jesuit order anymore. And I will maintain my vow of celibacy because I intend to remain a priest. And that's what he did. Pope Paul gave him a document in 1965 called a rescript, which permitted all of that. And that's when he left Rome and eventually made his way to New York City.
And here we are today.
What year was it that you met him in? Because he wrote the book, The Jesuits, in 86 or 87. I'm wondering how long this had been percolating with him by the time that you were able to have dinner with him.
What had been percolating, Tim?
The ideas about the Jesuits, the rescript from Pope Paul, at the close of Vatican II. I'm just curious what year.
That was over. Let's say if he left the Jesuits in 65, the Jesuit book that came out in the late 80s, and I had read it before ever meeting him. I had also read Hostage to the Devil, as well as several million other people, because that was his first really big bestseller. And then the book that I was reading at the time that I met him was The Keys of This Blood, which now in hindsight, having subsequently, like 6-7 years later, read Windswept House, I realized that the book Keys of This Blood was kind of like the graduate level textbook by which he laid all of this out, in which the subtitle of the book was something along the lines of the contest between Pope John Paul II, the capitalist West, and Mikhail Gorbachev for control of the New World Order. That was the title of that book. And then when he wrote Windswept House, he wrote, and you know what a faction is. You've probably heard that many times. Well, he wrote a factional novel about how he saw the theories and dynamics that he wrote about in Keys of This Blood. He wrote in a factional way how he envisioned it playing out.
Well, that definitely comes through. That's where Tim and I, we were I mean, we were just talking about this before taking your call tonight. We had already been doing shows together and getting to know each other for a couple of years leading up to 2022, which is when we read Windswept House together as part of a public book club. And I'm sure we're going to be bringing some aspects of that story up in a few minutes. But just getting back to this timeline that you set up in the book, at that point, once he's released of his vows of obedience and poverty, and he comes to New York, and you said, and I learned this actually from one of Tim's shows as well, following up on the stories of Malachi Martin, the man, the myth, the legend. But one of the odd jobs that he worked when he was in New York City was as a yellow cab driver, and I just wanted to know when I heard that we had an exorcist driving a cab in New York, I thought that was so incredible a story. But I wanted to ask you, have you had any? Did you ever get any kind of stories about those days as a cab driver in New York? Did he have any really awesome taxi cab confession stories or anything from those nights cruising the city?
No, he didn't. And I think it's because at the time he was too busy. He was actually, while he was a cabbie, he was holding down two jobs. One, during the day, he was working in a donut shop down in Greenwich Village, and he was cleaning in the kitchen, doing things like clearing out and washing out the grease traps in the kitchen and the fry ovens, that kind of thing. And he would go right from there to driving his cab. And it was only a couple of years after he had been in New York that he was taken in by the Lavanos family, because at the time in the 1960s, Cardinal Spellman told him, you're still a priest, and it's not a good look for you to be living on your own and you're not incarnated in the diocese. And so Cardinal Spellman arranged for him to meet the Lavanos family, a wealthy Greek shipping family in New York. And they lived on East 63rd Street between Park Avenue and Lexington Avenue, 116 East 63rd Street. They had an absolutely palatial apartment. I was in it many times. And Malachi actually had a small, I guess you would call it a micro sublet apartment within their apartment. And that's where he lived. His living quarters were totally separate from the rest of the family.
Oh, wow. That's one hell of a setup right there. I have another question about Windswept House, actually the opening of Windswept House. And I think this will probably put us off down a trail that's very compelling stuff. Did Father Martin ever talk to you a little bit more directly about the enthronement ritual? It opens up, that book opens up with the enthronement of Lucifer, the ritual from that connects pretty much the Eastern and Western hemispheres, one in Rome and one in, where is it, Tim? The Midwest somewhere?
Milwaukee? It was Charlotte, South Carolina.
Oh, Charlotte. Sorry.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Well,
Charlotte, South Carolina.
You got
and the presider in what was called the corresponding enthronement chapel in Charlotte was the man who would become Joseph Cardinal Bernardin in Chicago.
Yeah.
He told me. He told me that.
Close friend of the current pontiff.
You know, when Leo was brought up in the news for the first time, the first person I got in touch with was Tim. I said, "What do you think?" And you threw that back at me. He said, "You understand who this guy was tight with, right?" And then we went right back to Windswept House, and I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that's one strike, I guess." I don't know.
I would have said 2 strikes, guys. I would have said 2 strikes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then the second strike is Supich, because remember he'd given the current pontiff had given this speech saying there's a strong lineage, conceptual and ideological lineage between Bernardin and Supich and myself, and I just thought, deep church, deep state.
That's not something I'd want to be bragging about. Tim, do you want to know what the feds in Chicago refer to Cardinal Supich as? Do you know his code name with them? Blazing Cupcake.
Blazing Cupcake?
Blazing.
That's what I call him too, actually.
My God. Well, that's not a good name at all. This gets worse and worse. You know,
unless it's a birthday or something.
Yeah,
then
I don't know.
It's okay.
Just one night in college. Robert, for the people out there who have not read Windswept House, I just wanted to put this out there. There is everybody out there, this is a book that opens up, that sets the stage with this enthronement ritual that takes place. It's synchronized between Charlotte and Rome, spoken in perfect Latin. It's essentially an inversion of a mass. And the whole point there, and I wanted to know if this was some kind of a plot device or if this was real. It added a sense of urgency. Tim, you'll remember this, a sense of urgency to the book, because it opens up essentially what we, the reader, are shown here is that not only this enthronement ceremony happened for ritualistic purposes. Obviously, there's geopolitical motives that are driving people in this book, and of course, as we see all around us. But there's also the top are also looking to commune with something on a spiritual level. And in the book, it presents itself almost as a plot device to add some kind of stress to the New World Order's plans to establish this kind of, one world government, one world church kind of a thing quickly before what it seemed to be almost like the ending of the effectiveness of the ritual. It almost seemed like there was a clock that was ticking down before, I don't know, that the enthronement was no longer powerful. And I didn't know
the availing time.
Yeah.
Right? The availing time.
Exactly.
The availing time.
So what is that something that is real, that is a cyclical thing, that there would have to be a new enthronement, or was that just a plot device?
I don't know whether it was a plot device. Malachi told me, though, that they were working under the Luciferians, the Satanists in the Vatican, and the United States were working under some kind of time constraint with having to have this accomplished during what Tim correctly referred to as the availing time.
And no insight as to what the time constraint was, like what needed to be the deadline for one thing or another.
No, he didn't tell me why. He just told me it occurred. And
did Malachi ever mention to you, Father Malachi, ever mention to you, Rob, any kind of, I don't know, ennobling or dignifying facts in the background of the famed apocryphal Leo the 13th story for the draftsmanship of the St. Michael prayer, which, whether it was 1886 or 1887, sounds like a sort of prefiguring of the availing time. Remember, they say, oh, Satan has between 70 and 100 years. I don't know if that's trad lore or if it's real.
I think Tim, I think it comes more in the heading of trad lore at this point, because he did say, though, he was very adamant that Pope Leo did have what Malachi described as a very shocking vision. And it was not something he saw, but it was more of a locution in which he heard two voices, one a very guttural, evil voice, threatening voice that he described as it was Lucifer, and the other voice was very calm, majestic and gentle. And Lucifer was just throwing these boasts at our Lord. And finally, our Lord said, okay, look, you have the time, you have the authority. Go for it. I'm paraphrasing.
So it's real.
Yes.
That's the one I'm referring to. For those out there who don't know, folks have asserted over the last 100 years that the draftsmanship of the long form St. Michael's prayer, which is a mini exorcism, was that Pope Leo the 13th at the end of the 19th century had heard these two locutions, and one was Satan, one was Christ, and that he gave something like an availing time. So I'm curious, is that connected to the draftsmanship of the faction?
Not to my knowledge. All I know is Malachi did tell me that the long form of the St. Michael prayer is only authorized to be said by clergy, whereas the short form that you and I know and probably recite at Mass on Sunday That's the one that's authorized for anyone, including all laity, anywhere and everywhere to recite.
Wow. Yeah.
Could I ask one more quick, just sort of binary yes/no question that I'm never clear about when I read anything about Father Martin?
Sure.
Again, you can plead the fifth if you want. Is Augustine Cardinal Bea a good guy or a bad guy? I know that there's the way that the story comes down to us is that Father Martin knew the third untold portion of the third secret of Fatima because Cardinal Bea shared it with him, which
yes,
I wasn't sure what the rules were, which would have constrained him from doing so. But I've heard Cardinal Bea was a good guy. I've heard he's a bad guy. What do you say? And if he was a good guy, I guess that explains why he would have shared the third secret with Father Martin.
Tim, he was a good guy. All right. For his time, he was a liberal, but he was not a liberal the way you and I would understand it, say, in the past 20 years in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
All right. He was much more, if you want to think of it this way, he was much more closer to, imagine Ratzinger Benedict XVI, but a slightly more conservative version of that. And that's what passed for a liberal back in 1960.
And is there, if you permit just one more follow-up there.
Sure.
The most conspicuous small role in Windswept House is none other than, Frank, you and I have talked about this a lot, is none other than Ratzinger himself. Mm-hmm. He's there on
yes.
that master key list of, fake character, real character names. Why is he such a small role? Because I don't want to take over one of Frank's sort of Ratzinger questions, but there's a lot of parity between JP2 and Ratzinger, and yet he's barely in Windswept House. He's there, though.
I think because the character of Ratzinger in Windswept House, he was more a literary device than anything else to help the story. And I don't think, because Malachi wanted to focus on the person he called Papa Valeska, Wojtyła. It was Papa Valeska in the novel. He wanted to keep the focus on John Paul II. And that Ratzinger was part of the Council of Cardinals who advised him. And he was one of the good guys, but he was by no means a traditionalist.
Yeah, I have the list over here. Tim, this is the list that we were working off of during those book club sessions. And there's Ratzinger, Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. And then we go up and we were looking at all the other things. Like, Klaus Schwab is in here. All of those Riverside Drive, New World Order kind of secretive meetings that were taking place in New York City, where they left the 13th chair open for Lucifer, his representation at the table, and all that stuff. You have these people in here. There's Klaus Schwab, World Trade Organization at the time, and it's just, it's not. And here's, and as far as my Tim, you brought up my question about Ratzinger's role being, how could you have known in the, you might know who would be a future candidate here, but Windswept House is written in the 90s and it comes out in the middle of the 90s. And what we have here again, that's about 10 years out from 2005 when John Paul II dies on my birthday. And you really can't see you can't see the forest for the trees at that point. Now, geopolitically, it centers on the plot to force John Paul II to resign. And it really, in this book, it really plays up all of the really, the very factual ways that the world just loved this guy so much and how hard he was as a personality to defeat politically through smears and character assassination, in the same way that we see the media working today to maintain political balances in whatever way they want. You can see all this stuff happening. Ultimately, it failed. But what seemed to have worked flawlessly was forcing Benedict to exit stage. And then, of course, after Benedict left, we just concluded 12 years of Francis, who posed absolutely no resistance to globalism in the least. So there's another one of those reasons why anybody who might have said, Malachi Martin is just, blowing smoke, back in 1997, 1998. If you're reading through his stuff in 2025, you have to have a different tune.
He was just off by one pope. John Paul II had the strength of character not to be pressured into resigning. Malachi told me that there were factions within the Vatican that very definitely wanted John Paul II to resign, because Malachi said that they knew, and it wasn't long after the assassination attempt, they knew that John Paul II had been afflicted with Parkinson's, and it was very slowly progressing. But by the late 90s, it was very evident. If you've ever known anyone with Parkinson's, they've got the tremors of Parkinson's, and John Paul II had exhibited that. And what happened was, they said, well, they were trying to frame it for the good of the church. Oddly enough, the enemies of the church were trying to frame it for the good of the church. And they were trying to tell His Holiness, look, Your Holiness, your health is obviously compromised. And if it comes to a point where you can no longer exercise the Petrine office in a functional, responsible way, we have to have this resignation protocol. And Malachi said that the only thing John Paul II would do is that he initialed the resignation protocol with a short note on the protocol indicating that he read the document. He did not execute the document. He read the document. However, it's my supposition that they bided their time with Benedict, and then when it became opportune in 2013, they forced his hand. I'm convinced of that. They forced his hand.
Oh.
Isn't it strange though? I don't know where you're at philosophically on ratifying or not ratifying the existence of Sankt Gallen Mafia, but isn't it strange that they were, if you know the lore of those guys in Windswept House who were in the Sankt Gallen Mafia trying to force JP2 to resign there, the story comes down to us that they were as or more petrified of a Ratzinger pontificate. So it doesn't make sense that they would be that petrified of a Ratzinger pontificate if they eventually had the leverage to force him to resign. That's what's always confused me.
Well, what happened was with Ratzinger, Tim, you probably know this already, Ratzinger was a much more cerebral pope, all right, as far as dogmatic theology, than John Paul II was. John Paul II, if anything, was a quasi-mystic pope devoted to Our Lady very, very much. But in his philosophy, he was a phenomenologist. John Paul II was not a Thomist by any stretch of the imagination. And I asked Malachi, I said, what's the difference between phenomenology and Thomistic theology? And he gave me a very earthy explanation. He said, suppose you've got a little dog and you've got a new white rug in your house, and you come home with your wife after dinner and the dog made a mess all over your new white rug. He said, a phenomenologist would look at the dog mess on the white rug and he would say, I wonder what that means. I wonder what the real meaning of this is. Whereas he said, if a Thomist walked in and saw it, pardon my French, and he'd say, honey, the dog took a dump on the rug. And he said that was his way of explaining the difference between Thomism and phenomenology. Phenomenologists always look for some sort of esoteric meaning behind things, that it's very much almost in a modernist sense through human experience. Whereas Thomism is just, it's very dogmatic. Here are the beliefs of the Roman Catholic Church. Take them or leave them. If you want to be a Roman Catholic, you buy the whole set of books, and this is what you believe.
Oh.
Whereas phenomenology, it's very open-ended. It's very open-ended. But he said that John Paul II had been influenced by phenomenology very early in his life as a priest, the 1940s and 50s, whereas his mentor in Poland, the man who was known as the Lion of Poland for the hell that he gave first the Nazis and then the Stalinists, Stefan Cardinal Brzezinski, He was a dedicated Thomist, and Malachi told me that Cardinal Brzezinski was always remonstrating with Karol Wojtyła that he was flirting with something very dangerous in his I don't want to say love affair, but his strong attraction to phenomenology.
Sounds very sophisticated phenomenology instead of when you think about Stoicism versus the Sophists. It seems like you can't get lost in the weeds on something that's a little bit more obvious to others. But let me move on to something else, because there's so many. We haven't even gotten into the Exorcism and also the Vatican II. First of all, let me just start with some coast to coast questions, because when he was on there with Art Bell, I mean, first of all, these are some of the the 7 episodes of radio history, I believe, that they're just up there. And I can ask dozens of follow-up questions just on those episodes alone. But Father Martin once told Art, because Art said he was going to go out to Rome, to the Vatican. He wanted to go out there and see it. And he told Art that using his name in, around certain men at the Vatican archives would get them special access to places and to see certain things. And he sounded very serious. So I wonder, have you ever gotten any inside scoops on the archives and things that are in there that, because that's another place of great legend and myth. But what about insight into that?
Sorry, no inside baseball.
No.
About the actual Vatican archives, the so-called secret archives. What I do know is that back in 1995, I was going to be taking a vacation to Italy, and a friend of mine in New York City, he had done a beautiful 18 by 24 pen and ink rendition of Our Lady of Fatima. And I showed it to Malachi, and I said, I'd like to present this to the Pope. Is there any way? And he said, he took a look at it and he said, this is quite beautiful. He said, let me make a couple of phone calls. And I met him a few days later for lunch again at our favorite Greasy Spoon Diner on Lexington Avenue. And he gave me a sealed envelope and said, take this to Monsignor so-and-so within the Pontifical Biblical Institute. And he'll read the letter. And afterwards, after he reads the letter, he'll know that you are who you say you are, that I'm vouching for you. And this Monsignor gave me 2 tickets to a semi-private audience the next day with Pope John Paul II. Have either of you guys ever been to the Vatican's Nervi Hall, the audience hall with that absolutely ghastly sculpture at the front?
I go that once.
I didn't know about. I passed by it once. I didn't know about the snake head and the ghastly sculpture when I lived there in Rome.
Yeah, Tim. You didn't miss anything. It's creepy as hell.
Yeah,
but there was an antechamber in the Paul VI audience hall before you go into where the thousands of people usually are. And it held between 20, maybe 30 people. And that morning, there was about between, I'd say, 15 to 20 people in there. And I got there and I had the piece of artwork there. And we waited for about 40 minutes. And His Holiness came in with his entourage. And he was as far from me probably as you are from the wall behind you. And I think there's a photo of it in the book. And I handed him the artwork. And boy, when he looked at me, he didn't look at me. He looked through me. I mean, whatever people want to say about his failures, there was something otherworldly about John Paul II. And he was accompanied by Monsignor Żywisz, his Polish aide, who took the piece of artwork after the Pope blessed it. And the Pope reached into his robe. He probably had about 150 of them in there. But do you know those white rosaries the Pope always used with the kind of off-looking crucifix, the bent crucifix?
Bent crucifix, yeah.
Yeah. And he gave me one of those. And, I still have it.
Wow.
I still have it.
Wow.
So Malachi had access within the Vatican, because otherwise there's no way I would have gotten that close to His Holiness.
Well, speaking of the the crucifix and the rosary that you were given, in the opening the couple of pages into you're just setting the stage of the story here. You said that Malachi, was a defender of relics, or a protector of certain relics. I wonder what those were.
He had a number of relics. He had a first-class relic of St. Padre Pio. Not a whole glove or anything. It was a small relic in a reliquary. And the funny thing is, I like to tell people that I was a fan of Padre Pio when he was a nobody, because it was before he was even made venerable. Malachi also had a relic, a tiny sliver of the True Cross, relic of the True Cross. In fact, I remember challenging him once. I said, Malachi, is there anything to the story that if you take all these relics of the True Cross and put them together, you'll end up with a cross that's about 30 feet high and 15 feet wide? And he kind of laughed. He said, no. He says, for all the verified relics of the True Cross that he knew about, he said they would probably, if brought together into one piece of wood, he said they would probably form a piece of wood about twice the thickness of a deck of playing cards.
Wow. That's not a lot.
That's not a lot.
So we're talking about splinters here then.
Exactly. Splinters. You're right.
Okay, well, out of all here's the one thing I wondered about, because you wrote about this, and I had questions about autonomy. What little I know that a priest, especially if they had been trained as an exorcist, they can't perform an exorcism on anybody that has not been approved by a bishop. So to hear about the kind of schedule that Father Martin maintained, naturally would bring up questions with people about what authority he was acting under when he was seeing people or assessing people who might be, spiritually possessed or obsessed or something like that. And lo and behold, I read in your book that it's because, and this is one of those things, these claims that are sometimes contested by people when they hear it, is that Father Martin was secretly made a bishop as well at some time along the way. Can you talk about that?
Yes, that was in the late 1950s, in the waning years of Pope Pius XII's pontificate. Most people think that the greatest religious repression that occurred behind the Iron Curtain of the Catholic Church in countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Bulgaria, etc., that it occurred under Joseph Stalin. And that's actually not correct. It actually occurred under Stalin's successor, Nikita Khrushchev. The repression of the church was much more brutal under Khrushchev than it was of Stalin. And the Catholic Church was sending priests behind the Iron Curtain to minister to the Catholic Church, and as well as it could, to keep a finger on the pulse of what was going on with the Catholic Church in what the agency called denied areas, because the Soviet Red Army and the secret police had those countries locked down very tight. And what happened was they were made known by the underground Catholic bishop in Prague, Czechoslovakia, 1956, 1957, that one of his underground priests went off the reservation, and he had married a woman and fathered children with her. And when the bishop met with him and said, Father, this is objectively scandalous. You can't do this. And this priest kind of said right back to him, there's nothing you can do, Your Excellency, because if you try to do anything, I'll denounce you to the Czech STB secret police and you'll be arrested. So there's nothing you can do. Well, he didn't think, all these Catholic bishops at the time, right? They were chess players. They were always thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead. So what that underground bishop did was he eventually got a message to the Vatican Secretariat of State for Extraordinary Ecclesial Affairs, Archbishop Cardini, and said, we have a problem. So they had to figure out, well, how are we going to deal with this? the bishop can't laicize this man because this man knows the bishop, and this man will denounce the bishop and will have a wholesale collapse of the underground Catholic Church in a huge part of Czechoslovakia. So what they did was they figured we have to have someone of proven temperament and emotional strength that we can send behind the Iron Curtain to get this job done, with the knowledge that we may be sending this priest, bishop, on a one-way ticket. And they decided, actually, with the input of Cardinal Augustin Bea, because Cardinal Bea had made trips behind the Iron Curtain as well. Successfully, he was never caught. And Cardinal Bea said, I've got the candidate. And he put forward Malachi Martin. And after Malachi went through an interview process, Archbishop Tardini brought it up to His Holiness the Pope. The Pope asked Tardini, do you approve of this candidate? Tardini said yes, on Bea's say-so, because Bea is recommending him very strongly. They brought Malachi in, and Malachi was made, on the order of Pope Pius XII, he was made a bishop in pectore. It was never announced publicly. He was made a bishop in pectore, and then he was trained by British intelligence, MI6, and U.S. Air Force intelligence, which is why you guys have seen the picture on the front cover of the book where Malachi is standing with the Air Force officers at Aviano Air Force Base in northern Italy.
Yep.
That's where he received his training in how to, there you go, out of focus and all.
Yeah, no, I can't get any closer to it. But anyway, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well, the British MI6 taught him the tradecraft of how to be a spy, to operate the way an intelligence operative who's on a clandestine or covert mission would comport himself. And the Air Force intelligence people taught him, this is how you jump out of an airplane without killing yourself. And they drilled him and drilled him and drilled him for about 6 months until the British intelligence officer said, as for a priest, he's about as ready as he's going to be. And he went into Czechoslovakia. The Air Force, it was called a Goonie Bird, the C-47. The civilian version was called the DC-3. They went in a gap, low under a gap in the Soviet radar coverage along the border between Austria and Czechoslovakia. And he was parachuted in about, I think he said 20 miles or so outside of Prague, where he was met on the ground by a prearranged contact who took him into the city of Prague, where he went and was bundled into a taxi cab. And the gentleman driving the cab was the underground bishop for the underground diocese in Prague, who briefed him more fully on the situation and who told him, this man is very contentious. There's a very high likelihood that if you have to laicize him, as soon as you leave his apartment, he will be on the phone to the Czech STB, the secret police. And true to this renegade priest's word, Malachi wasn't more than a couple of blocks away after meeting with him when he was arrested by the Czech STB and thrown into jail. They tortured him there, and they couldn't break him. That's when, in frustration, he was turned over to the KGB, and they took a train ride from Prague into the city of Lvov in what at the time was the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And he was taken to an infamous KGB prison there, and he was tortured for several months. And if people want to read exactly what was done to him, they're welcome to buy the book.
Yeah, I did read that part. I'm surprised he never talked about any of that in all of the times that he went on talk radio, and because he really divulged a lot about his life. This is that's an incredible part there that you put
Frank,
down.
I think pardon my interruption. I think one reason why he trusted me, all right, is because he knew I was an active duty CIA officer. And he actually confirmed that through Rome without the knowledge of the agency. He confirmed that I was who I said I was. And he trusted me to keep my mouth shut. And I did.
Did you ever make any kind of, I don't know, did you ever give him any kind of inclination that you would want to, write a book about him one day? That he's such a deep character. And
I did. And the one time back around 1995, 96 that I told him, I said, Malachi, I'd love to write your biography. And he just made light of it. And he said, writing a biography about my life, he said, you'd find more people interested in just sitting down and reading the white pages.
Well, that's not true. That's
of course, but that's what he said.
Tim, let me ask you a question here too, and of course, you guys can both answer it. I don't know if maybe it's a very short answer, but why would Malachi Martin have to be dispatched into Soviet territory to lay aside somebody? Why can't that just be a pronouncement from afar?
Is that the Ostpolitik that the Vatican was practicing from before the Vatican II, the Second Vatican Council? I'll let Robert. They had an official policy or unofficial policy called Ostpolitik, where they were not going to do anything to piss off the communist-run EO churches behind the Iron Curtain, would be my guess.
Tim he's on the right track. Ostpolitik did not really come into vogue until about the year 1964, because Pius XII, who passed away in 1958, he was a very determined enemy of the communists in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. So it was the Ostpolitik that came into vogue in the 1960s. It actually started in 1960 with the whole issue behind not releasing the third secret of Fatima, because part and parcel of that was Our Lady's, it was really a mandate, if you think about it, to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart.
Yeah.
And Pope John the 23rd saw it as, he was told by his cardinal advisors, if you go into the St. Peter's Basilica and in union with all the bishops who assemble for your council, and you consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the Marxist-Leninist party authorities in Moscow will see the Roman Catholic Church as declaring open war on the Soviet Union. And the persecution of the church behind the Iron Curtain will be a bloodletting more fierce than anything the Romans were able to do. Now, Malachi told me, if Our Lady said to do this, she must have had a plan. All right? Our Lady, he said, think about it. Our Lady was intervening in worldly geopolitics. And because she is the mother of the Savior, she must know what she is doing, and it was being done with the approbation of her divine Son. And he said, instead, these men were told by the party authorities in Moscow, if you hold your council and you consecrate our nation to the Virgin Mary and issue what we know you are planning to do, a formal denunciation of communist Marxism-Leninism, we will not permit any observers from the Russian Orthodox Church to attend your ecumenical council. And Pope John caved. He caved. The way I said to I said, Malachi, wait a minute. These guys basically flipped the Mother of God the finger and said, no, we're going to do it our way.
Yeah.
That's why I always said, well, just let us know what the secret is. I mean, why are you being obedient to people who have not followed orders? It would actually be, I don't know.
That was the first way that Pope John the 23rd more or less flipped the finger to the Mother of God. Was she had an expiry date, 1960, and
that's right.
So, and he always referred to the three prophets of Fatima, John the 23rd, as the prophets of doom.
Prophets of doom.
I mean, can we just speak plainly now? Do you feel that you have a good conception of what the unreleased, unrevealed part of the third secret of Fatima is? I mean, can you give us a hint?
From more than a hint, Tim. Come on, I'll tell you what I can. And what Malachi told me was also publicly stated by a cardinal who was known to be a liberal, by the way, Cardinal Chiappi.
Chiappi said it. Yeah.
Yes.
I thought he was a conservative, but yeah.
Well, he was an advisor to several popes, a theologian to them. And both of them said almost the exact same wording. They said that the great apostasy in the church will begin at the very top.
Right.
To me, that only means one thing. And I asked Malachi, I said, well, can you tell me any more about the third secret? And you got to realize, when I asked him that question, the internet was that was the mid-90s. The internet was in its embryonic state then. Okay. AOL was considered a big thing. All right. If you wanted to access the internet, you had to go through this thing called America Online. But he told me, he said, go and research, because he knew I had the research ability behind me with the agency. He said, go and research what John Paul II told the German pilgrims in Fulda, Germany in 1980. Now, do either of you guys know about the significance in Germany when it was a split country of the Fulda Gap?
Yes.
The Fulda Gap, for those who don't know, is where they thought was one of the main invasion points for the Soviet 1st and 5th Category A tank armies to invade Western Germany. And it's where they faced off against the U.S. Army's 5th Corps. All right. So the Pope went there because he saw it was a flashpoint. And a group of German faithful, they asked him, they said, Holy Father, why was the text of the third message of Fatima never fully released? And he said, the full text was not released so as to prevent the worldwide power of communism from achieving certain objectives over the West in a military sense that the West would not be able to counter or resist. So he said, my predecessors, I guess it was a bit of a fib when you think about it, but if the Pope's going to tell a fib, who's going to call him out? But then he kind of told the quiet part out loud. He said, if you are only interested in the contents of that message purely for the purposes of sensational knowledge, because you're convinced that it involves great catastrophes that you can't do anything to prevent, if you're just interested in it for sensationalism, is there really any point in wanting to publish that message now? Then he said, and this is where I think he said the quiet part out loud. He said, it should be sufficient for all Christians to know this much. If there does exist a message in which it is said there will be great earthquakes, great floods, and millions of people and nations will perish from one moment to the next, if you're convinced nothing can be done about such cataclysms, is there any point in wanting to publish the message now? That's when he raised his rosary and he said, here is the weapon against the approaching evil. Pray and ask the Mother of God for nothing else. And he also made a quasi-controversial statement when he asked a rhetorical question. He said, how many times has the Catholic Church been renewed by the blood of the innocent faithful? He said, this time, although it may be mitigated, it will not be otherwise. So that's what he said about the cataclysm. And I asked Malachi when I next met with him, I said, okay, this is what John Paul II said.
Yeah,
you already told, go ahead.
That's distinct from an apostasy from the tippy top, which is what I always thought it was. I mean, that's not a cataclysm. That Malachi also said to Art Bell several times, keep your eyes on the skies, and related it to Akita, the secret at Akita in 1973, right?
What he said about keeping his eye on the skies had nothing to do with the third secret of Fatima. He said that the third secret of Fatima, the actual third message, of which he read a German translation in Cardinal Bea's chauffeur-driven sedan, that February 1960 morning was written in German on one sheet of parchment-style paper. It didn't go on for pages and pages and pages. It was very spidery handwriting written in the hand of the translator. It mentioned the apostasy of the church, starting at the top, that if mankind did not cease offending God the Father, that she would not be able to restrain her son's hand from destroying a sinful mankind with punishments worse than the flood.
I think that's what everybody's been looking for.
Yeah.
And I think Akita, as Cardinal Ratzinger said, pretty much echoed that. Malachi also believed in the alleged apparitions at Garabandal, Spain, because he said he always found it very interesting that in February 1960, John the 23rd said, "We're not releasing the message." And interestingly enough, just a couple of months later, Our Lady begins showing up in an equally isolated little hamlet, this time in Spain, not very far from Fatima, Portugal, with almost an identical message, this time with a little bit more detail. And Tim, as you mentioned, Akita, all right? Benedict XVI, as Cardinal Ratzinger said, the message of Fatima is essentially the message of Our Lady of Akita.
Yeah.
I gotta to move. Well, actually, just to pile on to that. I guess that's the reason why people like me have really been interested in that. Obviously, there is a sensational aspect to it, and if from what little vague ways it's been described in the past, the third secret is it's just like imagine the worst thing you ever heard, and then think of worse. Like, okay, well now I just want to know how bad it gets, because to say earthquakes and floods doesn't really. I mean, I've heard much worse than that, but point taken. And I want to pull this away now from prophecy a little bit more into something that people are going to be able to identify from an American intelligence standpoint, and what really you want to talk about: infiltration of the church, infiltration of all types of churches, infiltration of governments, and of course the merging of the two. Which I wonder actually what someone like Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano would think about, or if he's ever contemplated the work of Father Martin, because all of the open letters that we got from 2020 and beyond really they talk about the plots essentially of Windswept House and the deep state and the deep church. But when it comes to just to try to roll in the exorcism aspect of this, Rob, when we have this chapter 13 in your book, I read it a couple of times. It's called the Fort Bragg incident, and
the incident of Fort Bragg.
Yeah. Well, there is a person that is central to this character, to this chapter, that has been brought up on this show many times over the years. I'm talking about Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And we've discussed his work on the development of the country's psychological warfare programs during Vietnam. Also, later iterations of that with Mind War, which was largely a media-based, demoralizing kind of a way to wage psychological warfare. We know about his founding of the Temple of Set, full-fledged Satanist, God knows what else. But I was enthralled to learn that Father Martin became intimately aware of some of Aquino's psychological training experiments because they had gone awry and essentially made some military men, I don't know what, fully possessed at Fort Bragg. Tell us about this.
Yes, sure. Malachi received a call from an aide to who at the time was Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney. It was not long after the end of Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. 1991, requesting that he come down to a meeting at the Pentagon for a consultation. And by this time, Malachi was in his early 70s. He didn't like to travel alone. So he called me up and said, I have to go down to Washington on the train on such and such a date. Would you like to come with me for the day, be my traveling companion? And I thought to myself, let's see, taking a vacation day and spending the whole day with Malachi. Let's see how long that takes me to make up my mind. So we ended up taking the earliest Metroliner out of Penn Station in New York down to Washington, D.C. Took about 2 hours and 50 minutes. Got down there, and then we got on the Washington Metro. We got off at the Pentagon, the underground Pentagon Metro station. We announced ourselves at the visitor gate, and we were escorted through into one of the inner rings, what they call, of the Pentagon. And it was in an underground conference room. And there were several officers there, high-ranking officers, colonels, lieutenant colonels. There may have been one or two brigadier generals, and there were 3 or 4 people who were dressed in suits. They were obviously high-ranking Pentagon civilians. And he was introduced as Dr. Martin. He was not dressed as a priest. He had on a cable knit sweater, if I remember correctly, a cable knit sweater, gray slacks, and a navy blazer. I was dressed in just a regular business suit. And I made very clear that I was there as a civilian friend of Father Martin. I was not there in any capacity as an active employee of the CIA. I was just Father Martin's traveling companion and friend. And what happened was, Malachi said, well, this is very interesting, why you've brought me down here, but do you want to tell me about it? And they said, well, instead of telling you about it, perhaps we had just better get things underway. You can see for yourself. And this young woman in BDU's battle dress uniform, she was brought into the conference room, and she was accompanied by, if I remember correctly, 3 or 4 very large military police officers. And she didn't look like she could hurt a fly, maybe, 5'7", 130, 140 pounds, maybe. And, she was introduced to Malachi as, this is Dr. Martin. I was at what I call the kids table, sitting against the wall. I was not up at the main conference table.
Right.
And they said, why don't we just start the demonstrations for Dr. Martin's benefit? And the first demonstration, she was told, you will demonstrate extreme weight. And she closed her eyes, and the doctor counted back from 15 or 10. And when she opened her eyes, these military police officers, they tried to lift her up. And they were not faking when the 3 of them could not budge her off the floor. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, she looked like the size of like a college student, right? And then one of these civilians said, all right, Carol, that's enough. Close your eyes. I'm going to count backwards from 10. When you open it, you open your eyes, the demonstration will be concluded. He counted down, she opened her eyes, and they were able to, easily, one guy was able to easily pick her up in the air, like throwing around a college cheerleader. And then they said, all right, for the second demonstration, we're going to demonstrate immobility. Same protocol was followed. She closed her eyes. She opens them when the doctor, or whoever this guy was, I assume he was a psychiatrist or something, he reached 0. She opens her eyes, and at a nod from this Pentagon civilian, the MPs, they bum rush her. They tried to tackle her. And literally, it was like watching full-grown men trying to tackle a telephone pole. They bounced off of her like they were trying to tackle a telephone pole. It was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. I'm surprised they didn't hurt themselves. And when the demonstration was over, they tugged her back and forth like a playful tug of war, but to demonstrate that, yeah, they could move her then. And then finally, and the thing that really kind of wigged me out was they had a butcher block I don't know if it was oak or whatever, but it was like a butcher block measuring about 2 feet by 2 feet by about 2 inches thick. And it was sitting on the conference table. And they said to her, all right, now you're going to demonstrate extreme digital penetration without physical harm. And I remember she had French manicured nails. And she took her hand and she placed it on top of the butcher block like this, with her nails facing down. All right. And they counted down. And over the period of about 3 minutes, she stood pushing her fingers against this butcher block until she was told to stop and withdraw her hand. And then they ended the demonstration. And in the butcher block was the imprint of her fingers in the wood to a depth of maybe half to 2/3 of an inch. I don't remember exactly how deep. She definitely made an imprint with her fingertips in this hardwood. And at that point, she was dismissed, and they escorted her out of the room. And they asked Malachi, they said, what do you think about this? And he wasn't going to show his cards. He just said, I find it fascinating. I find it very interesting. And then they showed him the binders. And they said, these are the training materials that the soldiers were having problems with, are using. And Malachi said, soldiers like Carol. And they said, yes. And Malachi said, well, what kind of acting out are they doing? And they said, well, in the middle of the night, 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, she has been known on occasion to fly into an unaccountable rage, pick up a fellow airborne soldier, and throw him across the room, leaving the imprint of his body in the wallboard when he hits the wall. And Malachi's eyes they got a little bit narrower, and he started paging through. And he took about 15, 20 minutes to go through these binders. And they were binders of the psychological warfare program that had been developed, this mind war, by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. And he surprised me because I thought he was not going to fudge it, but I thought he was going to use clinical terms to describe possession and exorcism. And he didn't. It surprised me. He said, gentlemen, it is my professional belief that this young lady is the subject of severe demonic possession. And my only recommendation to treat her would be a full Roman exorcism. Now, I remember when he said that, and I looked at the Pentagon attendees at the table to see whether or not there was going to be any smirking or any of kind of like that kind of thing, raise the eyebrow and, get a load of this guy. There was none of it. They were all stone-faced and taking notes. And he said, and I also recommend that you stop this program immediately. You are causing incalculable damage to the psyches, the mind, and the souls of anyone who is the subject of this training. Carol was the subject of a subsequent exorcism at Womack Army Medical Center at Fort Bragg about 5 months later. It was successful. It went on for about almost 2 weeks. I believe it was in the psychiatric wing of the hospital. She was subsequently honorably discharged from the United States Army, and she moved out west, I believe, to Arizona, and became a very successful artist. But she had left the military by that point.
And that was the only success. I mean, did Father Martin treat anybody else that was a part of that program, or was Carol the only one?
To my knowledge, Carol was the only one.
Oh, no.
I'm aware that there may have been other exorcisms, but I'm not privy to any of the details of them. It was all very, very, very quiet. Getting the Army to admit things like that would be like any other civilian to drive up to the main gate of the Central Intelligence Agency, on Route 123 in Langley, Virginia, walking up to the duty guard at the gate and saying, "So, what are you guys doing inside Russia?" You think he's going to get an answer, or is he going to get escorted back to the highway and a quick ride home?
Let me ask you real quick, because now we're coming up to a point where I'm trying to manage time here a little bit better. And Tim, of course, jump in with everything. Actually, Tim, this would actually be a good thing to get in with you, because I know that that Father Martin had, like a lot of people, a lot of problems with what came out of the Second Vatican Council, and from his concerns that masses were invalid in some way, that sacraments were invalidated in some way. But when it comes to the rite of exorcism, I've read things all over the internet that the rite of exorcism itself had in some way been weakened. Is this true from what you guys know? And if so, how?
Tim, do you want to take a shot at that? Because I can make a comment about it, but if you'd like to contribute something, go for it.
I'm here to listen, but I know the sacramentals, they call it holy water versus happy water, are vastly, just through my friendship with Father Chad Ripperger and things I've read from Father Gabriel Amorth, the holy water is much more effective than the happy water. I know the rite had been altered itself as the grand rite. Every bone in my body is of the conviction that I'm sure it was lessened in efficiency, but I know I defer to you.
Okay, I'll tell you how it was lessened in its efficiency. Do you know the difference between deprecatory and imprecatory prayer?
Yes.
All right. One of them, the old rite, is where the priest in persona Christi is telling the demonic entity, "By the authority of Christ, I exorcise thee." All right. He's using the power of Jesus as a priest to expel the entity. Whereas the new rite says, "Let us pray that the Lord Jesus will help this suffering servant."
Right.
Notice he's not commanding the demon to leave. It's kind of like, boy, we really hope Jesus does something here. And that's how the rite was changed, and why people like Father Amorth, whom Malachi knew, why people like Father Amorth went and petitioned, I believe it was the Sacred Congregation for Rites, and said, "Can we please continue to use the old rite?" And blanket permission was given to use the old rite for that reason, because they tried using the new rite and found that basically, if the exorcisms were successful, they were taking a lot longer, or they were not successful at all until they reverted to the old rite. The same distinction you made, Tim, with holy water versus happy water.
Were you ever on some of the? I remember that's another person who made a couple of appearances on Coast to Coast. Was a guy. He's an old New York City detective or sergeant.
Ralph Sarchi.
Sarchi.
Yep. Sarchi.
Yeah.
Were you able to go on any calls with him? He spoke about assisting Father Martin with some of these possession cases.
I never went on any calls that Ralph assisted Father Martin with. I know Ralph was involved in his own, basically what he called the work against the preternatural activities of the devil. He himself had a book out in the late 90s entitled "Deliver Us from Evil." And actually quite a successful movie came out of that book with Eric Bana and Olivia Munn. So, but I know Ralph. Ralph's a great friend. As Malachi would say, Ralph is one of those people that if it was the last battle, you'd want him in the trench with you.
I've tried to get him on the show. He's out there. He's active, to a somewhat degree on social media. Every once in a while, there's a New York Post article about him, but he doesn't do very much media.
Not anymore, because he was intensely active in it for many, many years. My supposition, and I don't know if I'm talking out of school, I'll probably hear from him tomorrow if I am, but I think not that it wore him down. He just decided it was time for, as he got older, for his life to take a different tack. It took a lot out of him. It really did. He was a New York City cop by day, and then assisting Father Martin, and um, fighting demons at night. I mean, when are you going to sleep?
Yeah.
Is it cool if I just ask some cleanup machine gun questions? You can thumbs up or thumbs down. Is that cool with you, Frank?
Yeah, oh, please. I love these.
Okay. Okay. I would say regarding Garabandal, since you said Father Martin had an affirmative view, isn't it true, A, that the seer lives out in your guys' neck of the woods, so I think in New Jersey, and that
Conchita?
Yes, Conchita, and if the events...
Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island, sorry. And if it's true, if the entire apparition and all of its claims are true, that they have to eventuate by the end of her life. She's currently alive and she's old.
She's alive, and I believe she's 71 years old. I met her. Okay. Malachi arranged for me to meet her. She would hold, back in the 1990s, a weekly holy hour of recitation of the rosary for the intentions of the Pope and Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And he brokered an introduction to me. She was very shy, very self-assured, very shy, very soft-spoken. She was not what you would call in any manner a social butterfly, but it was obvious that she had a great love of Our Lady.
Okay. Also, question number 2: are the psionic powers, with all of that, it's a very inclusive genus, would all of those mind control experiments that the CIA was dabbling in up to and including MK Ultra, would that all be, according to Father Martin, a portal to dark powers and expose basically everyone involved to possession, up to possession?
Now, realize, Tim, it's an opinion, but yes. But it's not a statement of clinical fact. That's what he believed. He believed that when you mess with these, what people call the untapped powers of the human mind, whether it's a psychological warfare program or it's a Ouija board, essentially what you're doing is you are told to open your mind and to empty it of your own consciousness. And Malachi said that if you empty it of your own consciousness and you're successful in doing so, that there are entities out there that are more than happy to fill the void.
Well, that's what we see a lot.
Referring to demons.
Yeah. Well, it's culturally, that's what we have talked a lot about, Tim. It's just, when so much has been burned out of people that used to tether us to the ground a little bit more, we're always talking about the creation of voids and what fills it. Tim, you have anything else?
Vatican II, according to Father Martin, I mean, it's a valid council, but is this count as the beginning of the apostasy from the tippy top? Is it he's not a sedevacantist, but where does he draw the line of demarcation? Is it between Pius XII's and John the 23rd's pontificate? Or which popes since 1958 are good guys, bad guys, and what are we to make of the council?
He said that the council although it was technically a valid council, he said it was so riddled with ambiguity that the modernists, in his words, could drive a big British lorry through the holes. And they subsequently did. I'll give you an example with the Novus Ordo Missae, all right, the New Order of Mass. He said Malachi never made the blanket statement that the Novus Ordo was invalid. He never said that. He said that the Novus Ordo, when said strictly according to the general instruction of the Roman Missal by a properly ordained priest with the right intention, was a valid mass.
Right.
He says it was deficient because it removed many of the ancient collects and the secret prayers, Bunini's commission, which had 6 Protestants on it. He said, but it was valid. He said the problem is when you had the liturgical free-for-all begin after the council, where invalid matter began being used for the Blessed Sacrament. I remember one time, and it's ironic because it occurred at the exact same church where a couple of weeks ago, Father James Martin blessed that ABC News homosexual reporter and his partner. It's
right.
the Church of St. Paul the Apostle on the Upper West Side, notorious modernist parish. And I remember going to a Novus Ordo Mass there. It was a Saturday evening Mass. And instead of handing out the Blessed Sacrament, you were presented by the priest with a wicker basket with chunks of bread in it. Except I looked inside the wicker basket and it was raisin nut bread that was broken up.
Wow.
I mean, it almost looked like it had a slightly greasy texture to it. If you've ever been to a restaurant, you get those little cannonballs of buns that look like dark bread, almost like fruit cake. Right, and they've got raisins and nuts in them. It's slightly greasy. And you're gonna have to clean my hand. Well, I looked at it and I had the presence of mind of knowing this is not the body of Christ. All right, this is something my aunt cooks up in her kitchen, but it's not the body of Christ. So I reached in and I grabbed a handful, and the look on this priest's face was precious. He said, you can't do that. And I said, actually, Father, I can, because due to the adulterating ingredients, I can just see with my own eyes, this is not the body of Christ, but it looks like great raisin nut bread and I need a snack. And I just took it and walked away.
Yeah, speaking of fruitcakes, I've heard of the pizza and beer masses of the late 60s and early 70s. I know what these guys were up to. But again, I just want to save you because I'm not trying to take over here. These are questions burning a hole in my mind, up or down.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So all right, let's just go with this one. John Paul I, would he have been up or down? Father Martin, yes, assassinated. No, not assassinated, poisoned.
Assassinated.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yes.
Did you ever talk? See, we don't have time for details anymore.
Sorry, yeah. There's
no,
so
but
much.
I want details on the wait, stop on that one. I want to know about this.
And Tim, let's just say Cardinal Vio was a player in that.
As a bat, I thought he was a good guy.
Vio?
Oh
no!
Vio. Okay, so we're talking about the list of
yes.
P2 Masons.
And in fact, if you want to know more about Cardinal Vio, ask Father Murr, because Father Murr did a pass through of the book before I sent it in to the CIA and then the publisher. Because I told Father Murr, I said, look, if I'm off base with anything liturgical about the Mass or anything, I said, please take out your big red pen and draw a line through it, because I'm not an expert at all.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I put in the book was, and you've probably heard about this too, it just came out a couple of years ago in Kansas City, where a couple of the pastors went to Archbishop Neumann and said, look, Your Excellency, we found out that they've been using invalid wine at the consecration for Mass for God knows how many years. And the Archbishop said, what do you mean invalid wine? And they said, well, it's technically grape wine, but it's also fortified with extra sugars, elderberry wine extract, and extra alcohol. And that rendered it invalid to become the precious blood. And Archbishop Newman, however you say his name, they said, what do we do? And he supposedly said, this is above my pay grade. I have to escalate the issue to Rome. I don't know what the resolution of that was, but when you think of all the masses that had been said that were invalid, the consecration of the Blessed Sacrament in the host was apparently valid because they did that properly. All right. But the wine was invalid, rendering the Mass invalid. So
well, it could be millions then.
Yeah.
That's in the book. I did a brief, back of the napkin extrapolation, and it's in the book.
Well,
it's not pretty.
Let me ask you one of my last questions here too, because it's one of you. Obviously, you were employed by the CIA throughout the entire time that you were friends with Father Martin. You're spending a lot of time with an ex-Jesuit priest, papal advisor, an ardent anti-communist, working alongside. Of course, he's able to publish books, as we're seeing now, that were really ahead of their time. That's the bigger thing there too. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about anybody who has an inside scoop on something, who was roundly silenced because they're getting too close to the target. Even if you insist that you were just traveling as a private citizen with Father Martin, can you be sure that you weren't being closely surveilled by your own employer at the time?
Yes, I can, only because with the agency, you have to, every couple of years, you have to pass what I would call a very ruthless polygraph examination. And they literally sweat the truth out of you. And it goes on for several hours. And part of that is a counterintelligence part of the polygraph test. And I just said everything straight out, and it's all, they ask it in terms of yes, no questions.
But they asked you questions about Father Martin.
They asked me questions of, were there any people that I was in contact with whom I discussed classified information restricted only to the United States government? And the answer to that was no. I never told Malachi a single thing that was considered classified information. In fact, he actually helped the government when Pope John Paul II came to the United States in 1999, because if you'll remember, just a couple of years earlier, the Blind Sheikh and his followers did attempt number 1 to blow up the World Trade Center with a truck bomb. And the Blind Sheikh was being tried, and he ended up receiving life in prison. John Paul II was coming to the United States. The Secret Service was working with, and Tim, you'll get a laugh out of this. They were working with, for the New Jersey part of his visit in Newark, they were working with Archbishop Ted McCarrick.
Of course.
And because of course. Anyway, the people from the Secret Service, they met with Cardinal, at the time, Archbishop McCarrick, his chancery officers, and McCarrick and his people told the Secret Service dignitary protection detail, the same people who run around with the president, don't worry, you can trust us. We are not going to publish the route of the papal motorcade until the night before he arrives. And this was about 3 weeks before the Pope arrived. The next day in the New York Star Ledger, front page, here's the papal motorcade map. And the guy who is the special agent in charge of the Secret Service, he called me up because I was doing the counterterrorism end for the agency with them. And he, well, I don't want to curse on your show, but he was literally like, what the F? He wasn't Catholic, but he's like, Rob, what the F? This guy gave me his word. He said, now what do I do? So
McCarrick published it early?
McCarrick published it early. He published it early after giving his word that he wouldn't.
Wow.
Because he hated John Paul II. McCarrick hated John Paul II. So what I did was the Secret Service special agent in charge, the SAC, he said, Rob, I'm at my wit's end with this guy. And by the way, I'm cleaning up his conversation. What do I do? So I called up Malachi and I said, are you available for lunch tomorrow with the Secret Service? We'll meet at the Isle of Capri. And it's about His Holiness's visit. And he said, of course. And we met in a private room at the Isle of Capri. And this guy just spilled his guts about what that bastard McCarrick's people did.
And that's all. Those are deliberate moves to either compromise a trip and or cause some harm, potentially cause harm.
That's right. You're exact 100% right. And Malachi contacted Vatican security, and what they ended doing was making up a complete end run around Archbishop McCarrick and his people and cut them completely out. Completely.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna jump to, do you know who the mysterious Italian gentleman was that McCarrick referred to in Villanova University in 2012 that helped him get Francis elected?
Actually, no, I don't. I wish I did, Tim, but I don't. One thing I want to point out was that earlier when we were discussing the Black Mass at the Vatican and the influence of Luciferian or Satanist activity within the Vatican. Do you know Rachel Mastrogiacomo?
Yeah, I've had her on my show.
Okay. When she was being ritually, I hate saying it, ritually abused by the ex-priest, Father Bertrand,
Mhm.
she was told that she was being prepared to be a satanic priestess, Queen Bee, for a U.S. cardinal of the Catholic Church, for satanic recruitment of Catholic priests. When she confronted Bishop McElroy at the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, all right, the director of communications for the archdiocese knew who she was, big black lady, and physically blocked her. All right. But she saw McCarrick, made eye contact with him as he walked by, and she said very loudly, "I forgive you." And she told me that in her purse, when she did that, she had the piece of Father Malachi Martin's corporal cloth that he said mass on, that I had sent to her. But her story is proof that what Malachi spoke of in the early 1960s happening within the Catholic Church, the darker things, continue almost half a decade later.
Yeah, the SRA.
And where are you as far as those things happening today, Robert? Because, I mean, I would love to have you back to talk more about the actual, about some of the incredible, the miraculous things that have happened in your presence, where you've seen for yourself, and also a lot more about follow-ups. Like I said, follow-ups about all the statements he'd made in public on late night talk radio over the years, and especially the very, I don't know, his death is controversial too. A lot of there's quite a few public theories about his death in 1999. So there's so much left over, and we only have a few minutes here. So I guess I would say everything that we have that's been published way back when and spoken about, that has been slowly validated to one degree or another over time, from the enthronement rituals and all of the geopolitical jockeying with New World Order technocrat types and whatever. How uninterrupted is that hierarchy of power today?
I would say it's still in place. It's still in place. The St. Gallen Mafia plays a leading role, and their descendants, if you would call them, their clerical descendants, are in place. Cardinal McElroy, who received his red hat to ostensibly combat the Trump administration's policies, when he was a bishop in San Diego not too many years ago, he gaslighted Rachel and her lawyers and the investigators until he was presented with a subpoena from a district attorney, and he couldn't ignore that. And that's all of a sudden when he became very cooperative, and the former priest, Jacob Bertrand, I don't want to say he was thrown under the bus, but you saw what happened to him. He was convicted of sexual assault. He was laicized. And it continues to this day, but it's very sub rosa. It's not like they walk around advertising what they're doing or who they are.
Very well said. And actually, it's a scary answer, really. But I guess one thing I didn't really expect it was going away anytime soon, because there's been, we always wonder what is justice going to look like in certain places, in an American sense or in a Vatican sense, a big reveal, some kind of a shake-up. We haven't had anything like that, so you have to imagine that things are just in place. Tim, you have a couple more rapid fires before we end?
Yeah, these can be really, really rapid fire.
Go for it.
So are you familiar with the book, The Fourth Secret of Fatima, Quarto Secreto? By Sochi.
Was that the one by Antonio Sochi?
Sochi, yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let me just, I'm trying to put it this way. In his follow-up book, he made the claim that the Obamas and the Clintons were essentially in on the forced resignation of Benedict XVI. Are you thumbs up or thumbs down on that?
Thumbs up.
Well, Are you okay? This is a gimme, but
Gonna give me a layup?
yeah, here's a layup. Bunini, Freemason or not? Is that a rumor
Yes.
from 1962 or not?
It's not a rumor. He was a Freemason.
Okay, and the Iranian, he became
his one-way ticket to Iran was
a punishment.
His reward. Yes,
Yeah.
Well, you can call it what you may, but there were, at the time when he was sent to Iran during the hostage crisis, there were maybe 8 Catholics in the entire city.
Right.
So you can do the math.
Right. So, yeah. No, I have follow-ups. I'm going to have you on my show. Maybe you and Frank on my show, or a follow-up on this show, because there's so much here. But I do like Sochi a lot. I have a high opinion of Sochi. Do you generally jive?
He's credible. I think he's very credible.
Yeah, it's one of the most eye-opening books in my whole life is The Fourth Secret of Fatima.
Well, I would love to see you guys link up on rules for retrogrades. I would sit in on that. Robert, I definitely want you back on over here too, because I just want to live in the realm of Tim will bring you into depths unimaginable, and that's something I would actually like to just sit back.
I'm a member of Tim's channel, so.
Yeah, see, I would love to just sit back and just absorb that as an audience member, to be honest. But I'll play whatever role Tim wants. But I want to spend a little bit more time in the pop culture coast to coast world. There's just so many hours of material there that I wish I could ask follow-up questions directly to Father Martin himself just by listening to those reruns so many times. So it would be wonderful.
Well, can I make a brief closing put out a couple of closing ideas on the table?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Tim, do you remember when you and Dr. Marshall, you did a podcast about 6-7 years ago about Malachi Martin? And
yes.
one of the topics in there was the title of his book, Jesus Now. And
yes.
part of that title said why Jesus is not coming again. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And how that could be seen as a very heretical statement. And I asked Malachi about that. Why does the front cover of your book say that?
Yeah.
He said, well, he didn't pick the title. His publisher picked the title. It's the same way with my book about Malachi Martin. I had a different title. My title was Malachi Martin and the Approaching Scream of the Ancient Beast. And They said no. They wanted something more anodyne, so they went with In the Shadows of the Vatican. He said, at some point, Rob, you realize when your arms are too short to box with authority, and you just kind of throw your arms up and say, okay, fine. As long as I've got my ideas in there. But he also said something else. He said, one way, because people focus on the eschatological return of Jesus at the end of time in his corporeal glorified body. And he said, it's not a heresy, but what it is, it's diminishing the real presence of our Lord, validly consecrated and confected, sitting in every tabernacle throughout the world, where he has deigned to lower himself, body, blood, soul, and divinity, his entire godhood and humanity, under the auspices of a host. And he waits in the tabernacle for people to come to the church, spend time with him, tell him they love him, to pray to him, to talk to him, to tell him their problems, their questions. And he said, do you know how much our Lord is ignored that way? He says it must grieve him almost as much as the scourging to know that he has done this and made himself so fully available for us to pour our hearts out to him. And yet we don't. And he is among us now. And I never forgot that.
I still don't understand the subtitle, but that's probably a topic for another time. I mean, I get all that. Yeah, we should go to Eucharistic adoration as Roman Catholics. It's it's a real blessing, but say the least.
Well, it's provocative if you're going to.
Well, I think it was provocative. They wanted to move books.
Yeah, it's definitely provocative. I mean, you're gonna at least getting people talking about it.
I was going to say the other point I wanted to make was a lot of people concentrate on Malachi's appearance on Coast to Coast, and Malachi's opinion. Because I asked him, I said, why? Given the fact that, you're going to deal with people who are apparently very earnest and dedicated Catholics and Christians asking you questions, but then you're going to have to field the stuff from the tinfoil hat crowd as well. And he never turned down an opportunity to reach people via what he called a communications apostolate. If you want more meat and potatoes thinking from him with regard to dogmatic Catholicism and what had been going on at the time in the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church at large, listen to the tapes he made with Bernard Jansen of Triumph Communications in Canada. Mr. Jansen, he is very well known in this space, and he has probably 35 to 40 hours of very hard-hitting direct interviews with Malachi Martin that I highly recommend.
Well, Rob, thank you for everything. Malachi Martin, In the Shadows of the Vatican. It's on Amazon Prime, but it's temporarily out of stock. So you can order, and they'll deliver it whenever.
Early next week.
It'll
be early next week.
Or there's the Kindle.
Get the Kindle version.
Show up right on your Kindle app immediately. But that is, go and check that out. The link is actually in the description of this episode. Rob, thank you so much for all the time tonight. It was really really wonderful, and I look forward to amending these talks at a later date, maybe in January sometime. I really hope you have a wonderful Christmas in the meantime.
You two guys as well. Have a great Christmas, a very holy and blessed Christmas. Happy New Year. And Tim, if you'd like me to appear on your show, I'd be more than happy.
Please. Yeah, I'd love to have both you guys on, and we can just both kind of get in more into the weeds with things that were introduced here. Thanks for including me, Frank, and Rob. Thanks for sending me the free copy of the book, and I've really enjoyed this as always.
Okay, well, rules.
My pleasure.
Rules for retrogrades. Go check out Tim. Go check out Rob. You'll probably see Rob on Tim's show at some point soon. And thank you guys, one and all, for your time here tonight. Thank you, fellas. Be well.
Be well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there you go. Well, it's 8:57. Listen, I had a wonderful time, and there's still so much to say. And if some of that lost you, I know that there's only a portion of this audience, a sizable portion, but not all of them. I know we have Catholics out there. We have Orthodox. We have
outstanding show tonight, Frank.
Oh,
we need a part 2 including Timothy and Rob.
That would be wonderful. I'd love it. Thank you so much. And of course, we have plenty of Protestants out there. We have people who don't care at all. But I knew that what we were going to get, especially with Rob having that CIA background, and there being so much international overlap with Cold War stories, going beyond the Iron Curtain, things going on here. There is great importance to all of this stuff, and you can concentrate on whatever depth you want. Really, you can just go to the surface level. Below the surface level, Secret Service getting ready for Pope John Paul to come by, and the sabotage from a cardinal, who would later be outed as one of the more vicious abusers of children, a McCarrick guy. I mean, think about that. That is crazy. The wars inside everywhere. I just like the stories, and there's more to come because there's so much more to ask. Let me go into in the chats here, because I'm so sorry. Forgot to tell you guys, I'll stay live a couple of minutes past 9 because it's 9 o'clock right now. But we're giving away the gold backs tonight. Got 2 more gold backs and plus the Quite Frankly satin finish ornament. I'm going to be sending this your way with the gold. Oh, and not only that, you got 5 of these wonderful cards. This is all art from Moriarty. These are 5 Christmas cards. I actually saved 20 for myself so I can use them as thank yous. So you're going to get these Christmas cards. Wonderful. This is Moriarty painted that. She's incredible. And I'm even going to throw in some Dulce and some Keto Brainz creatine too. So I got your names from last night. You have a couple more moments to send in some super chats right now. Let's read them all though. Jay Brits, thank you so much. Outstanding show. It's great to have you on. Dragon Sage says, thanks, Frank. Great guest. I hate this show. I hate it as well. All right, let's see. Gen X to the 7th power has become a member on YouTube. The nugget level. That means that he can use all of those wonderful chat room emojis now, and all of the members only posts that are now on the members only section on YouTube are available to him. It's the same stuff that's posted to Patreon, Subscribe Star, Quite Frankly, members only. So wherever you want to become a monthly sponsor, by all means. There you go. Okay. Katie says, looking all distinguished in your 3/4 zip shirt, Frank. Well, thank you, Katie. I was wanting to look distinguished tonight with my Yankee hat on top of it. Lee Demon says, Candace is a silly woman. She just is wanting clicks. She says a bunch of stuff with no real evidence. Well, the heat is definitely getting turned up. Then we'll see who is left holding the bag, because somebody's going to be left holding the bag. And it's crazy that Tim has been working on something with Candace over the last 9 months. I don't know what it is. And for that to be coming to fruition in December of 2025, no less, when she is either she invokes so much strong feelings. It's crazy. Let's see. Rosie says 2 coins in the fountain. Indeed. Tossing 2 coins in. Thank you, Rosie. All right. Now, I added a lot of these in already. Let's see. 2 Dogs Mike D said, just got home from work. Can't wait to watch the whole show. You know, let me tell you something about 2 Dogs Mike D as I put him in here, because I added everybody else as I was conducting that interview along with Tim. 2 Dogs Mike D. Been watching this show a long time. He came to the Jamboree. And let me give you a little something about the Jamboree for you all right now, back in September. It was such another reason why it was so magical. Driving around town that day, that weekend, it was so surreal to see people from the audience in the flesh walking around your town. And one of the last memories of like Jamboree night that I remember is seeing 2 Dogs Mike D and King walking together and kind of just, hanging out on a street corner down by Main Street, only about a half a block away from the coffee house, Port Rush, that we were all hanging out at over the course of that week. And I drove by, probably from dropping Jay off at his Airbnb, and I drove by and I saw them just standing there, Mike D and King. And, I could have honked and all that stuff, but I just soaked up the sight a little bit, because I said, wow, look at this. There's Franklies all over my town. And it was just, it was really cool. I think about that from time to time, Mike. All the best to you. Okay, let me see here. Kobe Shumway says, hello. And let me put Kobe in there. So thank you, Kobe. B. Jeff Lamb says, great show, Frank. So Kobe and Jeff Lamb. Kobe, Jeff Lamb. I appreciate you. And Jeannie, I got you in there as well. Thank you, Jeannie. All right, over on Rumble, how's everybody doing? And on to Badlands. Wait. Oh yeah, good. And Badlands as well. Did you enjoy yourself, Badlands? I'm sorry, we barely even spoke tonight. We jumped right into this thing, and away we go. So I'm going over a little bit, but who cares? Over on Rumble, we've got a few people there. The first one up is, let's see here. God's Child says, sorry, not more. Don't apologize. Thank you for just supporting the show. Awakened Boomer, that's our good friend Graydon, says, evening all, watching from Central Massachusetts, putting in for the Goldbacks and Christmas ornament. I got you in there already, don't you worry. Jay Semo says, fantastic show. Thank you. And Just In Valsky says, what a great show with Tim and Rob. Can't wait for part 2. Neither can I. Because I like these conversations that not only bring you down to, political intrigue levels, but also reference those unseen layers to reality and how big of a storyline we are all a part of. I believe we're right in the middle of a crazy definitive story. All right, let's see. Stephen and Lori, I got them in there. Thank you so much, Stephen and Lori. This is on Pilled. It says, extra sub for holiday. Tell Santa we've been good. Gold backs on the wish list. Remember, you can get gold backs. What's his name? Tony Arterburn carries gold backs because of me. I said, gold backs are a really great way for people to be able to buy gold without having to empty $5,000 into an ounce. This makes it transactable, that you can actually use it. And he got it. He added it to his selection there. So when you get in touch with Tony at quitefrankly.gold, ask him about it and use promo code Frankly so you get free junk silver. He's going to be sending that out. All right. Sentinel says, can we get a spelling for phenomenology and Thomism? My public school education and hooked on phonics can't get the internet to understand what I'm asking. Thanks. God bless. Red Pill 78 Raiders. Smash that red pill. Red Pill 78 was here. I'm going to bring on, I actually want to bring on Zach and Adel one of these nights. It'll probably be on a Thursday too. So we'll figure that out probably in January. Let's see here. Frank's Ducks Rocks cleared it up in the chat, and with Vesper help too. Both terms are different theories on how we understand things, i.e. both are theories of epistemology. Phenomenology studies conscious experience and meaning, and etymology studies material historical of dead places. Okay, well, I'm just going to continue to use the dog crap on the carpet analogy to make it make sense to me. Mr. Pete and Sean Joe went into a crazy fist fight with each other. I put you both in there several times each. Corey says, great show. Silly Boar says, great show as always. 123 SKG says, great show. Book club material? Perhaps. I mean, I like using fiction. By the way, I'm going to be publishing what the 2026 book club is going to be. I think I'm going to focus on maybe doing three books instead of the 5. I was thinking about in between a couple of more films. I don't know. We'll see, but we're definitely going to have some books to read, and I'll get them out there to all the monthly subscribers soon, the members, the sponsors. Let's see here. Silly Boar says this is an entry for Valhalla. And then Mr. Pete and Sean Joe are still slugging it out with each other. Let me get 123 SKG in there, and then we are on our way. Oh, Wart Guy just says, great show, Frank. And yes, I still think fondly about the Jamboree. Well, Paul, your thing just got out there today. You got to let me know. Actually, Wart Guy was the guy we sent out the first ornament to as a test to make sure it didn't get crushed. They're shatterproof, but I just wanted to see. So that'll be a whole waste if we start sending them all over the country. And there's that. Okay, you guys ready? Let's do this. Who is winning the cards and the gold and the ornament out of 58 names? The random winner is Nathan W. Nath W, who pops up across a couple of places. You know, a lot of you guys bounce between several chat rooms. Nathan, Congratulations. Get in touch with me. I'll send this out to you immediately. There you go. Okay, for the rest of you guys and gals, I will see you, tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's Friday, and I'm going to be doing a coffee stream from Studio B, as I usually do on Friday, the Keto Brainz coffee stream. I can't wait just to honestly just have a cup of coffee with you guys. I look forward to it every morning, and it's even better when we get to do it in front of a microphone. Tomorrow night, I will be live at 7 o'clock with Anthony and my buddies Kyle and Tim, but we are going to be live on the Playhouse channel on YouTube. It's a special show that I do with my brother Anthony from 10 Second Songs, Anthony Vincent from 10 Second Songs. So come and hang out. It is just a lot of reminiscing. I think tomorrow, one of the things I'm going to be playing with Tim and Kyle, which is going to be funny, I found a countdown of like the top 5 or the top 10 gayest breakdowns, gayest heavy metal breakdowns. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. The 5 gayest breakdowns. When I saw this video, I said, oh, this is hilarious. This is from 16 years ago. So they're going to be old breakdowns too, but it's from bands that we probably all remember from when we were out there. And look, somebody in the comments just said, why is the algorithm whipping this out in 2025? I don't know. Just goes to show you can put something out 16 years ago, and 16 years later, YouTube will randomly suggest it to 500,000 people. So we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow. I hope you guys join us for the Playhouse. And in the meantime, thank you so much for tonight. Join me on the flip side. We're going live. We're going to stay live until the lights go out in about 20 minutes. And that is all on pilled.net. So I'm going to be dropping that link in the description, pilled.net, or if you just want something easy, you can jump over to quitefrankly.tv. I'll see you there. Oh, no. I know what I did. What did I do? I knew it. I knew I did it. I screwed it up.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
All right. Quite frankly, film before a live studio audience. And to our super chatters, thank you. Thank you for the support. Thank you for playing. And I will see you guys very, very soon. Next week is going to be fantastic. But we'll be going live all over the place. Keep your notifications on. And join the Discord so you always know what's happening when we're not live.
Goodbye.
All right, that's it. Thanks, everybody.